So then you mentioned that the coding's all done on a kind of individual player basis. So I'm presuming, let's say I'm one of the analysts, am I just given one player and that's all I'm coding for that game and kind of and you mentioned as well like kind of off the ball actions, which will kind of come to with the football language and stuff like that. But how does that look for the analysts? How are they? Because I'm presuming for a lot of them it would be somewhat different to what they're used to. So that kind of training and onboarding to make everything consistent and standardized.
Yeah.
How does that kind of look?
Yeah. So ultimately we realized that, well, we did the data analysis on it. So a player's on the ball for about a minute 49 per game.
Wow.
So if you actually really want to understand a player's performance, you can't just look at when they're interacting with the ball. So um yeah, they got given a player and they sat and they watched that one player. I always joke, but there's half truth in every joke, I suppose, that if they don't know the score at the end of the game,
Yeah,
they've
yeah,
probably done a good job
yeah,
because the goal not to watch the game is to watch that player.
yeah,
Um, and then we combined all of the data from all the individual players, and that's how you start to get the team metrics through. And then the biggest challenge was exactly you alluded to it was how do you get 22 people to code in the same way, right? To see the same events. A pass is an easy one, right? But we're talking about did a player make an offer to receive him behind the opposition defensive line? That's a little bit different.
yeah,
So we had some really good people join that had done this before.
yeah,
They created gold standard codes, so we'd get the whole team to code the same player.
yeah,
We had a gold standard of that coding, and then our data scientist guys have built out sort of reliability checkers, so we could run each analyst's coding against the gold standard.
yeah,
And a little bit like you have IDPs, individual development plans with players,
yeah, yeah.
we have a similar thing with each analyst because
Cool.
we'd understand, okay, they're really good at this element, but they don't see this element very
Yeah,
well. So
yeah,
actually, we could show them where they're going wrong in those elements. And again, there was a lot of time invested in that because we wanted to have the deepest data set in the world, but also the most accurate and reliable. And I think by the time we got to the World Cup, that's exactly where we were.
yeah. That's really interesting in terms of the testing and feeding back on kind of areas to improve. So one thing you did say there, Chris, was like off the ball actions and one of them being kind of offering for the ball. So can you just explain how do you define offering for the ball? How is that kind of defined for the analyst?
Yeah, so and this is where we built the FIFA football language because we needed to have real clarity over what each event was.
Yeah.
Um, and it's funny, I was thinking about this because I knew we were going to be doing this interview, but um, even in my role now,
Mm.
like talk about coaches have game models, you talk about, how you use data in clubs, like clarity over what you're talking about
Mm.
is so important,
Yeah.
right? So give you an example, possession. When does possession start? When does possession finish? What if I'm playing the ball and somebody gets a block when the ball comes back to me? Am
Yeah.
I still in possession? Is that a new possession? Is it the same possession?
Mm.
I think there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer to it, but what you need to know as a coaching staff and as an organization is this is how we are defining X.
Yeah.
So even when people are building out game models, for me, definitions of what your language actually is are probably where you should be starting.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the football language was exactly that. It was we defined how we were going to break the game of football down.
Yeah.
Uh, it's available free to the public. It was never intended to be private.
Yeah.
So we actually wanted to put that out there so that analysts, coaches, whoever was interested could go and have a look and see. And like I said, it's not necessarily the right way, but it's the way FIFA want to go about it. So
Yeah.
it was just a stance to say, this is how we're going to look at the game. And if you want to see how we're looking at the game, you can go here and you can see it.
Yeah.
So, like an offer to receive is one of three things. It's either a hand signal, so a player physically, either their arm in the air or arms in front,
Yeah.
asking for the ball. It's a change in body shape, so they're turning to then face the ball to create a passing option, or it's a movement. So the in behind movement of a nine running between a centre back and a fullback to try and create an option to receive the ball. So um, like I said, you can go on the FIFA Training Center, you can see each of these elements with video, with text.
Yeah.
And there's even now an e-learning module, an introduction to the football language you
Yeah.
can go for free as well. So
Nice.
yeah, I think that took us. probably 2.5 years, because you think you're there, and then you watch the game. After 40 games, something unique will happen, and you have to go back and slightly readjust. So that's why the game's so fun, I suppose.
Definitely, I'll for sure link the learning center below the video when this is out, Chris. So so that offering for the ball, then I'm presuming, I think I've heard you say this before, in terms of that is then further classified as whether it's offering for the ball in behind the defense or offering. Is that right? So it's kind of, there's different categories to things like that.
So we try to have everything in relation to the opposition. So I suppose a pass is a pass, but if a pass is breaking the defensive line, it's a different type of pass, right? So I think knowing, and this is where tracking data starts to come in, knowing where the opposition are, where they're stood. If a team are playing a back three, a back four, a back five, it makes a through ball behind the defensive line very different. So we try to always put everything in relation to the opposition. We created a line detection algorithm, which basically automated lines and units. With formations, we know formations are very fluid. What you see on Sky Sports before a team kicks off, you very rarely see on the field unless they're in an organized mid block, So that line detection algorithm would change every frame, every time the ball moves as well, to be realistic to how the players are stood on the field at that moment in time.